my thoughts fly back today to the heroes of old who fought so bold in many a battle fray. Near Carrickshock, where the memories flock, mid the heather bare and brown, stands clear beneath the windswept street of dear old Huggins town. Beloved though spot by the cherished plot, where historic memories shine, when tides were crushed onto the dust, as Tracy told the line. For a noble cause they broke the laws, and their lives they did lay down. In grief and pain in that narrow lane near dear old Huggins town, their praise will sing, let their voices ring for those gallant men of old. Their blood they shed in gores of red, they won the martyr's crown. Those gallantry the tide set free near dear old Huggins town. A memorial grand it now do stand in Carrickshock, Boreen, to show that the Welsh mountain men have kept their memories green. To them we present this monument, their worthy of renown. They never shied, but they bravely died near dear old Huggins town.
Ber bannacht chrí go tír na héireann, banchnig an ói. Mar a bharan de hílrach is éver, vancnig an ói. Mátar se chrí is má chinú géir. Iad galafik sias fe Graham Marlene, is a Malta, na riamh fe chias godea, vancnig an ói. If these hallowed hills and valleys of South Kilkenny could speak, they could unfold for us the mysteries of ancient civilizations like the portal tomb of Liachnaskyle. They could tell of kings and chieftains, of saints and scholars, and of the invaders, usurpers and planters who peopled the story of our race.
It was the oppression and injustice, the poverty and privation at the hands of a British administration that prompted the people of Hugginstown and the surrounding area of the Welsh Mountains to make a stand against the forces of the British Crown and to fight for their rights, pro fide et pro patria, for faith and fatherland. This event, known as the Battle of Carrickshock, took place here in this laneway on Wednesday the 14th of December 1831. "175 years later, the same pulse of patriotism beats in the bodies of the people of Hugginstown and its hinterland, and the desire to remember the defiant determination of their ancestors prompted them to stage a reenactment of the battle on the 12th of August 2006. The purpose of this presentation is to mark in a more permanent way the memory of the men and women of 1831 who were prepared to fight and paid the ultimate price to right the wrongs of a British political system which they found intolerable.
The Irish people have always been well known for their resilience and resolution never to be crushed. Even in the face of an unjust governance and economic dilapidation has sheared unfold, they stood firm and inspired each other with their language, literature, songs and music. It was not unusual to find a young man travel for miles at night to some favourite farmer's house to meet his friends in the safety and comfort of their own culture. Perhaps a good fiddler or a pretty girl was the inducement. Picture the spacious kitchen of a farmhouse with the blazing firelight dancing on the pewter plates and wooden dishes on the dresser, the white hoops of the pails upon the stillion near the door, and the wooden peggins in rows up near the rafters, the banatee in a sea beside the fire deftly knitting, the faratee sitting on the other side, and the neighbours listening to the fiddler as he rolls the music out under the feet of the dancers. The dancing master acted as a conduit of news and sensitive information from one community to another as he travelled from parish to parish to teach the steps of Irish dance to willing learners and to entertain the locals with the rhythms of his nimble feet.
Good morning, children. How are you this morning? Yeah, come on in.
The travelling dancing master had his counterpart in the travelling schoolmaster, who settled in the community to set up his clandestine school. This underground system of education defied the edicts of the penal laws, and the head schoolmaster would stay in one area for as long as the children's parents could afford to pay him. Impoverished parents valued the hedge school system so highly that they bartered their sides of bacon and firkins of butter to pay for it. Most hedge schools were in very bad condition. Some of them were built of sods in the ditches and had no windows or chimneys. A large hole in the roof let in the light and let out the smoke from the fire in the middle of the floor. The door was a narrow hole cut in the mud wall. In summer, the master conducted his hedge school in the open air. Yet the standard of education in many of these schools was exceedingly high. Apart from the 3 R's and history, geography, natural science and Christian doctrine, some hedge school masters also taught Latin and Greek. Little wonder that some hedge school pupils were able to continue their studies for the priesthood at ecclesiastical colleges in Europe such as Salamanca, Lisbon and Paris. We are told that these products of the Irish hedge schools outshone their continental counterparts in their knowledge of the classics. It was one of these hedge school masters, William Keane, a Kerryman, who figures prominently in the Battle of Carrickshock, and it is interesting to note that the strategy adopted by Keane at Carrickshock bears a striking resemblance to the strategy adopted by the Greeks in defeating the might of the Persians in 480 BC. The tapestry of Irish history is dotted with disappointments for the Irish people. A British Parliament met in Dublin at the end of the 17th century and, in blatant breach of the Treaty of Limerick, it embarked on a raft of legislation to deprive Irish Catholics of their property, their means of livelihood, their civil, religious and political rights. These laws, which have come to be known as the penal laws, were also intended to keep all Catholics both ignorant and illiterate. The practice of the Catholic religion was driven underground like the hedge schools, and priests were hunted as they fled from one mass rock to another to minister to their flock.
Over the next 200 years, this penal code, though mitigated in the ferocity of its implementation, crushed the Catholic spirit and left a natural feeling of hostility. Even when the foundation of St. Kieran's College, Kilkenny in 1782, with the permission of the local Protestant bishop, seemed to mark the end of the penal laws with its motto, Hiems transiet, the winter has passed. The Irish peasant population had not recovered from its abject poverty and privation. Its feeling of helplessness and hopelessness was further deepened by the failure of various attempts at insurrection.
As the 19th century dawned, the memories of Vinegar Hill still rankled in the minds of Irish men and women, and the names of patriots like Worth Tone and Robert Emmet were said in sadness and distress. Vina fermiori extracals de lo is the iha chun an argata oil. The peasant farmer worked from dawn till dusk to hack a living from his patch of land for himself and his family, constantly conscious of the racking rent that he had to pay to his English landlord. Failure to pay this rent brought with it the proctor and the evictor, and with them too the pinch of hunger and the panic of homelessness. Rents were high, prices were low, evictions were the order of the day. Pleas for clemency fell on deaf ears as the door was broken down. The few sticks of rugged furniture were dragged out, and the burning coals were taken off the hearth to die hissing on the wet ground outside. Where resistance was offered, force was used, often with outrageous results. Finally, the thatch was torn from the roof as the forlorn family was left along the laneway to seek refuge with a neighbour, or to put up a makeshift shelter behind some stone wall or hedge. By the 1700s, Irish tenant farmers were already sorely oppressed by the excessive rent exacted from them by high-handed landlords who sought more and still more revenue to sustain their lofty lifestyle. Vi brew a vanya agus a bhúrint. But the patience and endurance of these farmers were stretched to new limits by an act of the Westminster Parliament in 1735. By this act, a new tax was imposed on Irish Catholics to finance the upkeep of the Protestant Church in Ireland and its ministers. This tax was fixed at 1/10 of the family income and was known as a tithe. Centuries of Protestant endeavour to proselytize the impervious people of Ireland had failed dismally. Even if they could not be prevailed upon to swell the ranks of the Protestant persuasion, this latest legislation was yet another attempt to at least make them technical supporters. The ostensible reason given was that because the Protestants were so few in number, their resources were inadequate for the support of their religion. But the hard-pressed farmers bitterly resented the payment of any tithes to a Protestant clergy of whose administration they could not in conscience and would not on principle avail themselves. The harvest of 1830 was particularly bad, and many farmers were in tithe arrears. At the end of December, a group of Carrickshock hurlers sought a meeting with the Reverend Hans Hamilton, parson of Knocktofer, to request a reduction in the tithes. He would not receive them. This was the same Hans Hamilton who had levied a second tithe on the Catholic farmers to build a high defensive wall around his church in Knocktofer. Rinadar Iracht Ella, another delegation accompanied by Colonel Harvey and Mr. Green, the resident magistrate, approached the parson a week later. They assured him that they would be satisfied with a 5% reduction in the tithes, but the parson was not for turning. The farmers were not for paying tithes, and by March 1831 there was no sign of settlement. Níraibh súil le socrú ná réiteach. On instructions from Dublin Castle, Parson Hamilton received writs against some of the farmers in November of 1831, and the necessary forces were put in place under Chief Constable Gibbons to break this resistance to the tithes. The parson placed these writs in the hands of a process server called Edmund Butler, an uncivil and insulting fellow, whose language was neither classical nor clerical. Apart from Butler's obnoxious personality, the life of the process server had become an unpleasant one, as he was followed on his rounds of process serving by an angry, noisy and menacing mob. One evening, as he passed through Barrettstown, Edmund Butler, in possession of his processes, was seized by a group of locals and quietly forced to go through the ceremony of eating his latitats, which they considered to be his natural food. They were enjoying themselves stall-feeding Butler when Father Parr, a friar from Knocktofer, came upon the scene and released Butler from his painful meal. Via is egan mutlera kanish, gurev faragnanina in Narira. No wonder that he needed the protection of 37 constables as he discharged his loathsome function on Monday the 12th and Tuesday the 13th of December 1831. The frustrated farmers found themselves a leader in the person of one William Keane, the local hedge school master. Master Scolla Noi, August Master Strategisch Comma. Keane drew around him a nucleus of such stalwarts as James Tracy of Kilcorner, John Kennedy of Ballygerdera, and John Ryan of Booyagloss. They met at the back of Billy Voss's multi-purpose store in Hugginstown to hatch their strategy of resistance.
That's the stuff. Like, we need this.
This drink is going to be needed. There's going to be drink needed before we deal with this butler.
Yeah, we have.
So where are these guys coming from? Is it Kilmagany?
They're coming from the barracks in Kilmagany, and they're coming up and into Newmarket.
We're going to have to get men to ring the bells in Newmarket, Knocktoper, Ballyhale and Hugginstown to have our men there to take him at whatever time we decide on.
Right, so what we do then is we organise one man for Newmarket,
One
for Knocktoper,
yes.
one for Ballyhale
Yes.
and one for Hugginstown.
Yes. Now what you need to do is when the soldiers are coming up Newmarket Hill, start with the bell in Knocktoper. What kind of a character is this Gibbons?
Oh, he's a very serious bloke. Yeah. This man has fought in Waterloo.
So I believe.
Yes,
so I believe.
but I think if our action goes according to plan, I think Carrickshock will be the one he'll never forget.
Well, sure, we don't need to take him to the butler we want, isn't it?
Yeah,
But
well-
he's not going to hand over butler.
So
to
he is,
like-
if he don't, we'll take Gibbons as well.
And where is
My suggestion is now, lads, that we lure him down into that laneway between the Carrickshock Road and the Kylevar Road.
I think that's a good idea, lads. It's about the best that we came up with. If we can get him into the Carrickshock lane.
We'll also want to make sure we have enough people coming from the Kylevar side in case they turn back.
That's right.
And we want coming from the Carrickshock Hugginstown Road. And we have enough men coming in from either side to block them whichever way they turn.
That match is in Coolmore that morning, isn't it? Now there's going to be a big crowd of people there for that match.
Yes?
And why don't we use them crowd of people to get the soldiers in the Carrickshock lane?
Yes.
We have a narrow lane, they have no escape.
And we'll have to gather up as much help, and every man, woman and child in the three parishes that have to be got and organised,
Yes.
and have pikes,
Well,
and maybe snatch hooks,
Yes.
something to get them off the horses.
Yeah.
What do you think of that plan then, lads?
Yeah.
Oh, I get the word around Ballyhale, anyway.
Yeah, I know you get it around. I'll be teaching in the head school, so I can get word around as well.
Can we get enough on the day to do this? Can we get enough men to take 30 soldiers? If this discussion goes outside that door, we're dead men.
Once I say Butler's name, I'll be able to get 600-700 people.
I think I'll tell him, you know, if he says anything about the people I Gavin, we'll tell him there's a funeral on.
So be it then. If he decides not to hand over Butler, there'll have to be blood.
That's the best.
And that's all allowed.
That's the best
And
plan
here's
we have.
Stewart.
They're not going to hand over Butler without trouble. Mark my words on it.
Yeah, you're probably right. Well, I will confront him.
We'll have to be prepared to take Butler by force.
I'll give Gibbons every chance.
Yes.
To hand over Butler to us, and there'll be no blood.
We
won't touch him, lads.
We
If
don't
give
want
him Butler.
trouble, but if there's to be trouble, so be it. We have to get Butler.
So
there's
yes.
only chance.
Right, lads, that is our plan then.
That's our plan.
We all agree on it.
Well,
It's a good plan.
Wednesday morning.
Wednesday morning, and I tell you what,
Butler or
it
blood.
will be Butler or blood.
Wednesday morning, yes.
Their strategies seems to have been based on the famous Battle of Salamis in 480 BC, in which a small Greek flotilla ambushed a mighty Persian fleet in a narrow passage and destroyed it. From the beginning, Keane and his comrades were agreed on one thing. If it came to a battle with the British Constabulary, it would have to be a success. On the morning of Wednesday the 14th, it was the turn of Dick Waterford Welch to be visited by Butler in Borina Gloch. Gibbons, with the experience of the Battle of Waterloo behind him, was mounted on his horse as he led his force with Butler in their midst from their barracks in Kilmagany, past the grand gates of Castlemorris House, past the ancient ruins of Ahavilla with its round tower and monastic remains. From there they climbed the 1.5 miles to Hugginstown, where they paused to restore their stamina, while their chief received ambiguous pleasantries from Billy Voss. On their march to Hogganstown, Gibbons and his men had heard the bells of the Roman Catholic churches of Newmarket, Knocktofer and Ballyhale distinctly ringing. As the Hogganstown church bell joined with the others, Gibbons asked Billy Voss the purpose of their ringing.
Good morning kindly, and God save you, sir.
Mr. Voss, can you tell me why all these church bells are ringing?
Oh, to be sure I can, sir. It's for a funeral, sir.
On a what funeral?
Musha, myself don't know, but 'twill be a fine decent funeral. Look at the people coming up the rise of the road. Praise be to God, whoever the poor man is, he must be liked.
As the gathering crowds grew bigger, they continued on their way down by Kylavah, followed by a crowd brandishing pikes, pitchforks and various agricultural implements and chanting "Butler or Blood." Having performed his odious task at the house of Waterford Welch in Boreenaglock, Butler and his protectors were returning the way they came when they found their passage blocked by a chanting crowd at Kylavah Loch. Canteri Erhul is Oscor Eg Bogarter. Chief Gibbons decided to turn right and head for Ballyhale, but a short distance down he found another group of football supporters in defiant confrontation, demanding the delivery of Butler into their hands. The only escape for Gibbons and his men was by a narrow laneway passing Sean Namon's pit. And there they found themselves ambushed on both sides.
Butler or blood. No tithes paid. So give us Butler now.
Patrick Power jumped in to grab Butler from his bodyguard. On hearing the commotion behind him, Gibbons turned round and shot Power in the forehead with his pistol. As the police pulled Butler back to the centre, Tracy tried to succeed where Power had failed, but Gibbons stabbed him with his bayonet, which snapped in his chest and was lodged there. In the gruesome melee which followed, Chief Gibbons was pulled from his horse and killed. Edmund Butler, the Tithe Proctor, was also killed. On that December morning, 11 policemen were killed in the line of duty, while 3 gallant Irishmen, James Tracy, Pat Power and Tom Phelan, made the ultimate sacrifice for the cause of justice. Many others were injured, and with the bodies of their dead colleagues were spirited away to remain in hiding. The bodies of Gibbons, Butler and the 11 policemen were hastily removed to Kilmaganny in carts provided by Morris Reid of Rossonara House. The 15 wounded policemen were taken to Rock Hall House, where they were treated by Dr. Peel. The remaining 11 officers, who escaped with minor injuries, took flight in all directions and sought refuge with local farmers. At an opportune time, the bodies of James Tracy, Pat Power and Tom Phelan were later interred with due obsequies in the cemeteries of Kilcurl and Kilcasey. Extra reinforcements of police and soldiers were drafted in to hunt down the felons, as they were called, who had perpetrated this outrage at Carrickshock. They scoured the hills and houses to find them and bring them to justice.
One man, John Ryan, a gentleman farmer from Condenstown, was found hiding up a chimney in a house that had merely attracted their attention with its beam of light emanating from its window. He was marched with another captive, Edward Duggan, via Hugginstown and Newmarket to Knocktoper, and from there they were taken to Kilkenny jail.
For 4 months, William Keane, the most wanted man of all, was hotly pursued, but he managed to keep a safe distance ahead of his pursuers. He realized that emigration was the only safe means of escape. He and another of the accused, Catherine Danaher, boarded a boat called the Cabinet at Giles's Quay waterfront, under the names of husband and wife John and Catherine Ryan. A sum of £40 was provided by the Carrickshock community for their safe conduct to Newfoundland. "11 of those involved in the battle, John Kennedy, John Daly, Pat Dwyer, William Walsh, Thomas Ryan, Richard Grennan, Edward Duggan, John Ryan, Billy Voss, Thomas Egan and Patrick Carthy were arraigned before the March Assizes of 1832 in Kilkenny. An indemnity fund was set up at once, and the ablest lawyers in the land were engaged for their defence. Chief among them was the great liberator Daniel O'Connell, who was ably assisted by Mr. Costello, Mr. Dixon and Mr. Hatchell. Baron Foster was the judge, and the state prosecutor was Mr. Blackburn. One of the chief witnesses for the Crown was Sergeant Peter Harvey.
You are a police constable, state your name and rank.
I'm Sergeant Peter Harvey.
Do you know the prisoner?
I know him very well. He was within 3 yards of me during the attack at Carrickshock.
Was he carrying a weapon?
Yes, sir, a pitchfork. And he was shouting, "Come on, boys, Butler or blood."
And was he present when Butler was killed?
Yes, sir. He stuck the pitchfork in my ribs immediately afterwards.
That will be all.
Just a minute. Just a minute. Have you a brother in the police?
I have.
Is it the only relation you have in the police?
I have different relations in the police.
Tell me, Sergeant, are you fond of mutton?
Yes, I like a good bit of mutton.
Stolen mutton, like stolen kisses, is all the sweeter. Is that not so? Where is your poor uncle who was in the police?
He is transported.
And to where?
I don't know.
Can't you even guess?
I don't know.
And was it for good behaviour that your uncle was transported?
I cannot say.
Are you anything to Harvey the sheep stealer?
A brother.
And was it in your house that the key to the cave where the mutton was stored was found?
Yes, I believe it was.
And for heaven's sake, who got your family into the police?
A gentleman,
What was his name?
Mr. Steele.
On the virtue of your oath, did not Mr. Steele recommend you for the police in order to get his neighbourhood rid of you?
Thus O'Connell demolished the credibility of each state witness in turn, and so adroit was the Liberator in his defence of the accused that no jury could be found to convict them. A second trial was fixed for June, but it too had the same outcome. The prisoners were freed, and bonfires bedecked the Welsh mountains and the valleys in joyous celebration. The writings and remarks of some commentators show a certain ambivalence towards the events of that day and the importance and impact of those events on the history of our race. Och bena varvel fein e gach dinna. One fact remains indisputable and constant. The Battle of Carrickshock marked the beginning of the end of the tithe system of taxation. It also inspired the ideals of later movements such as the Young Irelanders, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and the Fenians, and the rallying call for the men and women of 1916 was "Remember Carrickshock." Let it also be remembered that the people of the Welsh mountains proved to the Irish people of that time and to subsequent generations that when pushed to the limits of their patience, a community can force a government to introduce reforms and redress the evils of injustice and outrage. Beach muintir na hoite seo bródúil as an bart a rinú an lá starúil sin. The people of Hugginstown and South Kilkenny can be justly proud of the part played by their forebears in facing down a system of rule that took no account of their dignity and determination. Let our young people know too that if that courageous community of 1831 had not stood their ground, life might not be so good for them today. Ní bhaig eile héadí ann riamh a ríist.
Oh, the morning dawned fair on the mountain, and the mist rolled away to the glen, when those heroes awaited the coming of Gibbons, his proctor and men. Each stalwart hand grasped a weapon, the hurley, the pitchfork, the scythe, and by the blue heavens above them, those men would no longer pay tithes. From the east and the west they are coming, those mountain men stalwart and tall, not afraid of their country's oppressor, or musket, or bayonet, or ball. But hark to the sound in the valley, it's plainer as moments go by. The peelers and proctors are marching with Gibbons himself drawing nigh. Draw nigh to serve citation, to claim the 110 part again. No proctor you'll never collect it, with one voice cry the bold mountain men. Go back to your masters and tell them that as sure as we stand on this rock, no tithe will today be collected from the homes of our dear Carrickshock. Now a pistol report was the answer. Young Tracy the hero fell dead. Then up flashed the bold mountain men's weapons, and Carrickshock lay running red. Now a century has passed since that morning. Still brave men on the mountain still stalk, who are proud of their forefathers' values, who fought in far famed Carrickshock, who fought in far famed Carrickshock.
Neath the Irish skies where the heather lies, my thoughts fly back today to the heroes of old who fought so bold in many a battle fray. Near Carrickshock, where the memories flock, mid the heather bare and brown, stands clear beneath the wind-swept street of dear old Huggins town. Beloved old spot by the cherished plot where historic memories shine, when tides were crushed onto the dust as Tracy towed the line. For a noble cause they broke the laws, and their lives they did lay down. In grief and pain in that narrow lane near dear old Huggins town, their praise will sing, their voices ring for those gallant men of old. They done their bit, they tore the writ of their proctors for green and gold. Their blood they shed in gores of red, they won the martyr's crown. Those gallantry the tide set free near dear old Huggins town. Memorial grand it now do stand in Carrickshock, Boreen, to show that the Welsh mountain men have kept their memories green. To them we present this monument, they're worthy of renown. They never shied, but they bravely died near dear old Huggins town.
Remembering Carrickshock, a true story of a battle fought and won in a small rural community in South Kilkenny. This DVD is dedicated to those who died on the 14th of December 1831 at Carrickshock: James Tracy, Pat Parr and Tom Phelan. To those who were wounded and to the mass who took part and made this the first successful Tithe War battle in Ireland. We, the Carrickshock Commemoration 2006 Committee, dedicate this DVD also to the past Carrickshock committees who, through their dedication, have kept this historical event alive. We also dedicate this DVD to those who have passed on the story of Carrickshock through story, verse, written word, drama and song. Today, with the use of technology, we commit this story as a record for future generations. We also dedicate this DVD to you. Perhaps your forefathers stood at Carrickshock 175 years ago, lest we forget.